sorry, got to change. I'd like to welcome you to the April 30th Planning Board meeting. The first thing on our agenda tonight is the minutes from April 23rd, and I believe we're going to table this, right?
We've not
We
received
have
them.
not received them all yet?
We need a motion.
I move to table the minutes of.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. If anyone has anything to say that's not on our agenda tonight, this is an opportunity to speak to the board for 2 minutes. Seeing none, moving on. The next is a planning board decision, Woods Hole Partners LLC, and at this point, I will recuse myself from the meeting.
Okay, the planner, the assistant planner and I have had a couple of meetings. We've gone over various, and they were all engineering questions, problems, if you will. And we have a decision before us this afternoon, but Tom, I'm gonna throw it back in your direction so that you can summarize it. And that's what you get for not getting here sooner, because I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you that.
That is fine. I am, we did get a reply to engineering's comments. It arrived late Friday. It was in the hands of our engineering division. They reviewed it and have issued their letter as of about 30 minutes ago. I finished the draft decision about 10 minutes before 3. So we're working in real time here. Public Works, April 30, 2019, subject 533 Woods Hole. Dear Mr. Bott, as stated in our letter last week, we concur the drainage system complies with the town of Falmouth's 25-year design storm. We have no additional comments regarding the consultant's most recent letter dated April 26, 2019. To that effect, in the findings in your draft decision, I have noted for the board's consideration, and we'll go through the entire draft, but this is the bold that you see on that front line, because this is essentially one of those outstanding comments. Engineering reviewed the applicant's submission in a referral dated April 30th, 2019. The project meets the requirements to handle the 25-year storm. However, a number of Falmouth Engineering Division's concern remain based on the use of the HydroCAD software, with the designer citing differences of opinion and methodology. The Falmouth Engineering Division does not concur. That's where we're at engineering-wise.
Does not concur with what?
Does not concur with the comments of the review letter. So the review letter of
The
April 26th, the reply back from Cape and Islands Engineering notes their comments regarding our engineers. That the drainage system, let's see, those comments from April 26th by Cape and Islands. Based on our local knowledge and experience of this area, this is open comment number 1. They're not actually numbered, I'm just going by them in order. So what you're looking at is that last bolded comment on Cape and Islands letter of April 26, 2019.
Page 1.
Open comment number 1 regarding grates. Based on our local knowledge and experience of this area, the grates we referred are typically used and are an off-the-shelf item from a predominant local supplier. The model number of the grates has been added to the plans. We have submitted revised calculations showing that this item, in fact, has no impact on the design or intended functionality. Top of page 2. The revised calculations submitted to the town engineers on 4/23/19. We enclosed those calculations in the letter. Regarding time of concentration. Delineation of drainage catchment A5. Reply by Cape and Engineering. This seems to be a misunderstanding. We originally stated the subject yard area is proposed to flow by surface and contribute to drainage area A5. The delineation for drainage catchment area A5 is correct. The majority of A5 does not in fact discharge to catch basin 15. The grades do not indicate this, and the site will not be constructed this way. At time of construction, the site will be staked and grades set for contractors to grade the site. set structures, and pavement to ensure the design is constructed as intended. We have added spot grades to the grading plans. We did not change any of the grading shown, but which more clearly show how the drainage patterns will function as intended. Reply to condition, or comment number 3. Our previous statement answers the technical nature of the question and outlines the calculations used to arrive at this prediction. The nature of analyzing stormwater for drainage systems centers on empirical methods, estimations, assumptions, and professional judgment. After years of experience, some conservative parameters are assumed that result in fundamentally sound designs. The 5-minute period. TOC is not a standard for woodland areas B3 and B3A and B3B, respectively. This is a matter of opinion and would not result in any changes to the design. Nonetheless, we have submitted revised calculations as requested, which show no impact on the design or intended functionality. The next comment regarding C2 and the 100-foot sheet flow. The referenced 50-foot maximum is not a requirement. Our previous statement outlined the rationale, and provided backup information as suggested. Respectfully, this is a matter of opinion and would not result in any change to the design. Nonetheless, we have submitted revised calculations as requested, which show no impact on the design or the intended functionality. Next comment, use of C2 for a 2-year storm at depth of 3/4 inch. The 2-year storm depth is published by different reports, some being graphs where the rate must be interpolated for particular ways, meaning this calculation is an estimate of our original calculations and are within the appropriate estimate. Nonetheless, we have submitted revised calculations as requested, which show no impact on the design or intended functionality. Regarding the comments about issues of cover over the septic system, the Title V requirements cited are outside the scope of site plan review. The proposed leaching fields are pressure distribution systems providing for vast horizontal and vertical design flexibility. The concerns cited will be addressed in a way that does not impact the grading. As typical, we will be sure to keep stormwater management impacts in mind when preparing final septic system designs for submission to the Board of Health. And then on page 4, regarding the stone splash, typical Cape Cod berms are noted throughout, and there is no indication of anything different in this area. The berm is not depressed. However, we have added size information to the stone splash near CB14 to make it clear. Sewer line to be crossing out through the dry well. The revised plan has been submitted to show that correction, presumably. And lastly, regarding the HydroCAD models run for the 0 to 24 hours. Reply from Cape and Engineering: although certain drainage calculations based on a 100-year storm were submitted to the Cape Cod Commission, the Falmouth design standard is a 25-year storm. The engineering department requested we submit a different calculation for a 100-year storm. Since this is not a town standard, as the engineering department acknowledges, and the proposed system is not designed nor intended to meet a 100-year storm standard, we will not meet that standard. But would involve significant effort. Respectfully ask that the planning board not require us to prepare those calculations. That are the replies from Cape and Island Engineering. Our engineering department has stated, as they have prior to this concurs that the drainage meets the 25-year storm, and they have no additional comments regarding the consultant's letter. That said, one of the conditions, a couple new conditions that we've added to the decision. Condition number 8, any changes in grading required by the Board of Health to provide adequate cover for the septic system components that impact drainage patterns will require a revised plan for the planning board's review. As we know from our recent discussions, sometimes a plan comes in and the difference is de minimis and doesn't require anything other than the board's administrative approval of that. Another thing that came in quite late was a email from the conservation staff that I believe was forwarded to council as well, that the Conservation Commission had some concerns about the impacts to the northwest corner of the site, and we noted that in our decision as well. The conservation staff concerns about possible impacts to the northwest corner of the site will require filing with the Conservation Commission to address any issues. Any changes in grading or design to the site required by the Conservation Commission will need to be incorporated on a revised plan for the planning board's review. So those two issues of coverage for septic that the Board of Health would be reviewing if they have to make some grading changes, and those grading changes redirect water, then we'd come back, if they did, that would come back to us, and as well as any issues the Conservation Commission might have. The other thing, as a previous requirement about the unknown use of the dome, counsel for the applicant asked that we add to that condition. The condition shall not apply if the dome is used as common space for accessory use by occupants of the residential units with occasional public visitation. There was additional language in there about the number of spaces and abilities to reduce those number of spaces and waive those number of spaces. I didn't include that in the decision because it sort of implies that the board is going to act on something they haven't quite seen yet. So with that, we remain to have some differences with Falmouth Engineering and the design engineer. But the site meets the 25-year storm, and our engineering division didn't seem to think it was a good use of their resources to continue having this discussion with the design engineer on what they believe is to be their concerns. So I'll leave that with the board.
So you're
Typically,
saying it's a difference of opinion?
that is what the applicant's engineer is contended.
And the town engineer is saying it's a difference in standards?
Where does it say that? Why do you think that?
Because that's how you get this difference of opinion. They're using two different standards to get their answers, it would appear.
Different software.
Well, that's where we're at as of, 2:50 this afternoon. So,
Okay. And further, where we're at as far as board action is that we either pass this motion that has been put together, or we ask for an extension if we don't agree on this motion that has been put together, or because today is the last day that we can make any decisions on this project. And if we do not get an extension, if we do not pass the motion, then we would either vote to turn it down, or failing any kind of a vote, it would become a constructive decree, which means that they would get the project, but we don't agree to it.
Could we ask a few questions before we actually
Read the motion?
try to do that?
Mhm.
Or just to comment, to clean up whatever came from what has already been read to us? Is it your sense, Tom, having looked at what Cape and Islands Engineering wrote, which to me has a very respectful tone, and the draft approval that you've written for us, do you feel that the draft approval you've given us to act on, the conditions actually will set in motion corrections to anything that may be lingering? That this, were we to approve this, it either has to return to us under certain conditions, I see, or it would be resolved by other boards because it's within their purview.
well, in the case of any concerns for the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission, clearly they would be, regarding the issues of stormwater leaving the site, particularly onto Woods Hole Road. That falls into Mass Highway's concerns if the drainage system is surcharged. Given that they have to go to Mass Highway to get curb cuts and to get plans approved for work in the right-of-way.
Please open the door. I'm sorry, then come forward. You have to come forward then so that you can better hear, because it's a public hearing. We must leave that door open.
So given that they have to apply to Mass DOT in order for the curb cuts and the sidewalk work and the clearing the site distances, it's conceivable Mass Highway may have some concerns they want them to address. But other than that, I really can't extrapolate on, the merits engineering-wise. But
Well, let me ask the question differently, because it's hard for me to get clarity from what you said. Were we to approve this today, have we opened the town to any kind of liability? Have we created a problem for the town?
Well, the concern of our engineering division, as they've stated to Pat and to I, is that if someone provides calculations, in this case to the HydroCAD for the 100-year storm, and we don't concur with those calculations, that we potentially open ourselves up to some sort of liability. In the event that some event happens off-site, requires drainage, and someone comes back and says, why did the town, permit this? Based on, the information you that you submitted. The Falmouth Engineering Division didn't clearly sign off on the drainage calculations, the drainage decisions by the designer. That's their concern. Will that happen? I don't know.
But wouldn't it be a town concern if we were to act upon a 100-year standard, when in fact our published standard is 25 years? And I understand that the Cape Cod Commission has become involved. That opens up the 100-year standard, but not from the standpoint of the town. So I'm confused as to why that would even be considered.
Well,
reasonably.
the Cape Cod Commission looks at things from a regional policy perspective, so they're not necessarily, so they require that 100-year calculation. From the perspective of...
And they received it, right?
From the perspective of our engineers, they want to make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And from their perspective, not all our I's are dotted, not all our T's are crossed, and they believe that that's how things should be. We have had, and there's been a bit of a culture change here in Falmouth in the last few years in the engineering division, in the town planner's office, in that we've got a lot of things that I've seen in the file that say things to the effect that that should be fine. And we don't anticipate any issues with that. But for the most part, those folks in the engineering division, that's not how they were trained, that's not how they do business. So if they've got something, they don't want to give sort of a, yeah, it should be okay, sort of comment. They want to know that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So in this case, they meet the 25-year requirement of the storm. They do not meet the information they provided through their HydroCAD calculations, and the opinion of our engineering division, they don't agree to those. And out of abundance of caution, you've heard that statement before, that their report is what their report is. Other than that, I really can't opine much beyond that. But typically when, people have questions, they answer them, and everybody leaves happy. And right now, we've got a circumstance where the engineering division's looked at this twice. The design engineer continues to state that that's a difference of opinion, that's a difference of methodology, that's a difference of technique, and our engineering division doesn't concur with that.
Well, I would, of course, like to hear what other members of the board feel, but it's my sense that we have, the town is not put in a bad position by approval, but we jeopardize this project by dotting every I and T that occurs within a professional, among the professionals, because there will always be differences of opinion and methodology and techniques, timing of training, all kinds of things could account for that. But if they don't create a barrier for the town, really, any sense of liability, the things that you cite, going through them, that it looks like, we didn't apply an abundance of caution in the past, don't seem to have come back to us yet, although they could. I'm reminded that a gentleman came to speak to us when we were having open hearings, saying that it would be a shame for the town to miss out on this opportunity. It's an opportunity to have a good development in an appropriate place, and the historical building on it is going to be taken care of to the standards of the Secretary of the Interior, it would seem that the town is best off moving this along expeditiously, but it's too late to be expeditious. It's actually getting late. So I hope that we're not going to allow a disagreement among professionals that doesn't seem to rise to the standard addressed by the town's bylaws to prevent us from acting on it.
Well, the last statement of Cape and Engineering in their bold comments were, we respectfully ask that the planning board not require us to prepare those calculations. So if the majority of the board opts that that's not a requirement, then the majority of the board can vote that, and they'll have a site division, a site plan review approved.
Well, my concern is, here we are hours before the deadline.
Your voice is not well, Paul, though, that's why I moved that.
My
closer.
concern is we're hours before the deadline. We're getting this information now. We've known about this information for months. And the applicant has not provided the information. It's actually stonewalled to get to this point. So it's really not the planning board that's holding this up. It's the applicant who refused to provide the information requested by the engineering division. That being said, says here, Falmouth Engineering Division does not concur with the use of the software. Now, if that's still an issue, that should be a condition as well. However, I'm very reluctant to put a condition and say you're gonna deal with this when we haven't been able to deal with it for months. There has to be some good faith effort on part of the applicant to address these issues, because it puts us in a very awkward position to try to override the engineering division who's making decisions on the engineering aspects of this project.
John, do you have a comment?
I think we discussed this last week, that, part of the decision would be they meet the standards of the town of Falmouth. Just make it part of the decision. I'm not gonna override the engineering department, and most of it looks like it's pretty well resolved, and it's just almost de minimis, it's just language, but, I have to support the town of Falmouth engineering department. I don't think it requires 100-year storm calculations. And they sent a letter saying they're satisfied with 25 years.
Because 25 years is the standard.
Right, standard, so.
Now, much like, and it is our standard, but, and this is some of that culture change here in the town of Falmouth. When we do cell towers, we don't actually have a cell tower bylaw. We do antennas over 50 feet. I was kind of surprised when I got here, because we have a lot of stuff that's sort of been, we got some stuff, maybe it's coated in amber a little bit. And this is one of those instances. Moving forward with the NIPTES permit that the Falmouth Engineering Division is preparing and requiring that, all of our stormwater standards will be changing into a contemporary format, because we'll have no option. That'll be the requirement. So at some point, this issue will go away, because it won't be, there's a 25-year storm. And in the opinion of the Falmouth Engineering Division, they didn't need to provide the HydroCAD model to get to this point. All this work could have been done absent that. But when they did provide that information, and Falmouth Engineering Division noticed what they considered to be errant information, and they pointed out and said you should fix those sort of things. So, and that's their concern. If they get something, they're reviewing it, and it doesn't comport with what they believe to be required, they're going to call that out. Anybody with a stamp isn't going to let something just float by, because that stamp is a very precious thing, your professional stamp, and so they're not going to just sort of mail it in. So they have met the 25-year storm, and there are unresolved issues in the calculations provided by Cape and Islands Engineering. They've asked the planning board, we respectfully ask the planning board not require us to prepare those calculations. So if the planning board, the majority of the planning board feels like we're good to go, then voted good to go, and we'll have a decision done. I really can't say anything more other than those are your options.
Bob?
I agree with John and Paul. I was hoping all this engineering would be resolved between the town and the applicant's engineer, and I'm not really comfortable going against our own
No,
engineering.
I mean, a lot of it has been resolved here,
Yeah,
but I think it's almost de minimis, really. But I think the language has to support the town engineer. I don't think it's a hardship to the applicant either.
yeah.
But
What condition
before we
would
go-
you add?
Before we go too much further, when we get a chance, I have a couple of other questions about the motions here, the conditions, so.
Okay, did you want to, well, I want
let's
to chime
finish
in on
this
this
up
too.
first.
Okay. On this one, I also concur that we cannot ignore the town engineering staff, but I do think it can be solved by a remaining condition. And anybody can chime in on the wording. Paul has it down here. Do you want to read that, Paul? Remember, we don't have a motion yet, so he's
Right.
just reading it as an addition.
I jotted down here after the meeting started because we have not had much information. This letter didn't come in till recently.
I finished typing at 2:50.
And it's putting us in a real bind, but I'll suggest this draft as a way of getting through. Condition 13, the applicant shall resolve the outstanding concerns raised by the Falmouth Engineering Division on the use of the model software in a timely manner. And that's not sufficient, because it probably should be before a fixed date. But I think those issues can be resolved with a willingness to sit down and resolve them. There are issues of modeling, but you can resolve those issues. I'm a professional engineer, I know how this works, I've done this before. I've submitted applications to boards like this, and I've never seen anyone refuse to provide information. So I'm a little upset with the way this whole thing, but I'm suggesting wording like that might be able to get through with this and get it resolved. But I'm not very optimistic, because we've had months to do this and it hasn't been done. So there has to be some good faith effort on behalf of the applicant to get this resolved. I know you've tried over the weekend, but, you know, it's putting us in a very awkward position at the last minute trying to resolve these issues that should have been done months ago.
May I suggest something on that, Paul? Because instead of a timely manner, a date definite would be before the first occupancy permit is,
I started to write that,
okay. But is it
the
released?
issuance of
The issuance of a first occupancy permit.
occupancy.
That gives a date certain on that. And it gives, obviously, ample time to have a resolution of this.
Okay. So where do we go from here today? Do we give an extension so we can get a new motion?
No, we can
Or-
simply add
or
this on as
we
we've
can add
done
this
before
on
as a
and we can vote
condition.
this motion.
We can read the motion with that addition as a condition 13.
13.
And does anybody, do you see any other changes to that language that should be
I'm
made?
fine with that.
With that language?
Yeah.
Okay. And John, before we read this, you had a couple of other questions you wanted to ask?
On condition number 2, I just want to understand the process. It says, the project will require the applicant to file a new application for a certificate of appropriateness with the Historical Commission. And why did they have to file a new application?
They were, the reference is to the old one that was for the previous approval, previous approved apartments there on the site. There was one, I'm not saying this right, there was one in place that, because this is a new plan, is not covered by the old.
New in what manner? I'm really confused here. Is it the buildings that are new, the design of the buildings?
No, when you're talking about the design that was there that never got built.
Yeah, the WISE.
Yeah,
Oh,
Chris
okay,
Wise.
okay. So you're going back to that point?
Yeah, going
Okay.
back to that. There
Okay.
was one at that point, a certificate of appropriateness. That
Okay.
can no longer apply to this. That's why the word new. We could take out the word new if that leads to confusion. So it just reads to file an application. Does that make more sense and you prefer that?
I think it does, but I don't think it matters. If they know what it means, I mean,
Okay. Well, we haven't read this yet, so just leave it as it is.
I'm okay with you guys, okay?
Okay, and you had two, you said, a couple?
Yes, number 9, the conservation staff has concerns about possible impacts to the northwest corner of the site.
Yes.
Will require a filing with the Conservation Commission to address any issues.
Yes, sir.
What-
In the,
what-
in the original referral, the Conservation Commission noted they had no concerns.
Had no concerns.
They had no concerns, but.
Now they might have possible
Yeah,
concerns.
this week we got an email from Conservation staff, copied to ZBA as well, and also forwarded, and this, once again, arrived this week. Not what anyone would have expected. But the issue is, if there's a wetland on the area, they have to deal with it. It wasn't shown on the plan. The Conservation Commission has noted what their concern are, and so they'll likely have to file with the Conservation Commission. And if for some reason that filing with the Conservation Commission requires some changes to the site, then they'll bring that back to us.
So are they saying there wasn't any wetlands issues before, but now there may be?
Well, there weren't any wetlands shown on the site. The Conservation Commission
On
said.
the site plan?
On the site plan. The Conservation staff said in their initial referral, no comments, but, and I don't know what created the second look or whatever the case may have been, but we got an email about it today. And so rather than say, whoa, let's take a look at this as well, just to note, as we oftentimes do, here's the plan that the planning board has approved. Those things we already referenced that are in the Board of Health's realm, if there's some changes required for the septic system that requires changes in drainage or grading, then any of those changes will have to come back, and I think it's a similar condition with the Conservation Commission. It may be that they look at it and determine,
Yeah,
I don't think it's a real conservation term, but you got the okey-doke to go ahead.
I understand it, but, I mean, here we are the last minute, we're gonna make a decision, and they say now they find some wetlands on the property?
They're not.
Or there may be wetlands,
Yeah.
but maybe not?
This is not in an area where any work's being done. They're not gonna be filling a wetland or anything like that. I think it's the discharge from the site that the Conservation
No,
Commission.
but they're asking to have the applicant go back in front of them, or go in front of them.
And all is noted in the planning board site plan review is, they have concerns, and Conservation staff concerns about possible impacts to the northwest corner of the site will require filing with the Conservation Commission to address any issues. Any changes in grading or drainage on the site required by the commission will need to be incorporated into a revised plan for the planning board's review. Once again, just so we have the final plan of record if the Conservation Commission requires some change, as if the Board of Health required some change, as if the Falmouth Historic Commission required some change. Those changes would come back.
Well, that part I understand, but, I mean, to make the applicant now go file with the Conservation Commission, I mean, they would have filed quite some time ago if there was a situation.
I don't have a better answer for you, Mr.
I know
Curley.
that you don't. I guess I'm probably making a statement more than asking a question.
Let
Maybe
me
we
ask
can
it as a
change the-
question.
Maybe we can change the wording on that, John. First, the word "that" should be added after the word "site." And then change "will" to "may."
Could you maybe read that, please?
Yes, the conservation staff concerns about possible impacts to the northwest corner of the site that may require a filing with the Conservation Commission to address any issues. Because "will" is a very positive word that
Yes.
says you have to. "May"
I would-
says,
I like may a lot better.
it's been brought to our attention.
That may require.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Because since it's been brought to our attention, we can hardly ignore it, but we don't know that they are going to require that. And I don't
Yeah.
remember any
Yeah,
wetlands.
my only concern was like having a hearing. I mean, you know how it goes. You go to file for a hearing, they don't have enough people there. Then you have to get put on for 2 more weeks, and then you have the hearing, and somebody has questions, and it's another 2 weeks. I mean, this has been going on, everybody's had knowledge of this for a long time.
But Pat, could I just ask a point of information? Isn't there a really big timeliness issue here? Aren't there any rules or procedures of normal timing that would have had the conservation staff expressing their concerns much sooner in the process? And at what point is it too late?
Well, I don't, I can't tell you particular to the Conservation Commission's requirements, but if, there's an area of impact, then they have an obligation to look at it, and if it's something's not reported or not determined, they have concerns, they have a timeline for comments to departments. And so, had we had this on day one, they might have filed concurrently with the Conservation Commission. My concern is to make sure that we're not holding up the project on our end, but we note this late-breaking information about the potential for a wetlands issue in that northwest corner of the property. So I'm not suggesting that we're continuing this until the Conservation Commission make a determination. Just simply noting the fact that even given the time that it came in, that be included in the decision as a condition, that you may have a conservation issue, check with the Conservation Commission.
I like the language may. And I just have one other question while we're ready.
Sure, go ahead, John.
On number 7, applicant shall meet Mass DOT site distance and will maintain vegetation within land under Mass DOT jurisdiction as necessary to maintain sufficient sight lines and distance. Excuse me, if we end the sentence right there, does that satisfy, I mean, at the end, they're gonna have to meet Mass DOT standards. I don't think that a stamped plan or anything of that would be necessary here.
Well, we have both.
I know you have both written in this decision.
No, we received both of those today.
Oh, you received
A
both?
stamp plan and a letter.
Oh, beautiful. So do we still need to have number 7 in the decision?
I think that the revisions to the stamp plan can come out. I think the last sentence, in the event that such required distances are not achievable, the applicant will return to the board to discuss appropriate mitigation. I think that's appropriate to leave in there. Because our engineering division has basically said, we have a standard that's different from Mass DOT standard, but we'll defer to Mass DOT. So if Mass DOT says your site distances are fine, you're good to go.
The applicant feels very confident they can meet those standards.
They have a letter stamped by an engineer and a plan stamped by a surveyor.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, something we have talked about before, but that is not mentioned in here is Mass Historical. Should that be mentioned in the decision or not?
Well, I think, I'll defer to Corey as our historic commission expert. We refer to the certificate appropriate by the Historical Commission.
I mean, I think that could be addressed with the certificate of appropriateness. I mean, they do have to file a preservation restriction with the state, so once that restriction's filed, you're gonna have to show a rehabilitation plan for the dome, and it has to be approved by the state. And essentially when they get that clearance, they're gonna start the application process with the local commission.
So the Historical Commission reference in here covers it.
Yes.
So I understand, in order to get to the Falmouth Historic Commission, they have to be at Mass Historic Commission prior to.
Yeah, that's the assumption, is that they'll get clearance with Mass Historic Commission. They'll kind of meet their, bullet points requirements for the preservation restriction. I mean, if you feel more comfortable, you could add language.
No, if it's covered, I'm fine with that.
Are we all comfortable with number 4, the addition that's printed in bold? This condition shall not apply if the dome is used only as common space for accessory use by occupants of the residential units with occasional public visitation. Are we comfortable with that addition?
And that gets back to the question of what is the dome going to be used for? If it's simply an amenity for the development, there's no parking space requirements for that. They've provided the parking spaces they have.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with it.
I just thought I'd mention it since it was a change.
Because the other one says, okay, it's a revision of the site plan. But if it's only used for this.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would like to point out is that jitney stop will take care of some issues. People can use that to get there without,
Yeah.
because it's so well known how difficult parking is in the whole Woods Hole area. So if there's something going on at the Dome, it could very well be used to bring people there. Plus, remember, we're going to have also bicycle racks, so.
Can I get number 4 clarified then? Not using the bold letters, given the unknown nature of the eventual use of the geodesic dome and the limited number of parking spaces currently shown for the structure, the applicants will need to apply for revision to the site plan prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. What would they have to show on the new site plan that's not shown now?
If it's decided on a particular use, like if they're going to have artist studios in there, that particular use would require a certain number of parking spaces that might not be met by the 8 parking spaces already planned to be there.
So the revised site plan would be only for the dome area?
Correct.
Okay. Do we need to say that in this decision? For the dome parking only, or?
In the
Because they're gonna have a lot of construction done by the time they come in here for an
Yeah.
occupancy permit. For their
What do you
first
think, Tom?
occupancy.
Well, and I should note that it's a certificate of occupancy for the dome structure, not for,
Oh, I like that much better, yes.
so,
Says
prior to
that.
prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the dome,
For the dome, it already
Structure.
says that.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
well, if we just add, because some people have been sort of shorthanding this development as the dome development, so I wouldn't want someone to be confused that all those units were part of the dome
So we're putting in the dome structure. Okay. Okay. Are there any other?
I think on that one, there's no awful lot of wiggle room in what that, I don't know what that means. Occasional visitation, that's really, really up in the air. I think maybe the intent should be, instead of this condition should not apply, the intent of the dome at this time is for occasional common space for accessory use by occupants and residential, et cetera. So I think it'd be a more positive thing to say what the intent is at this time, because you already say if it's gonna change the nature of it, you're gonna do something different. So what the intent is at this time is to use it for,
But they don't know, that's the thing.
they don't
Yeah.
know, but if it changes, we're saying the condition doesn't apply if it's used for something else. Well, the intent of what it's used for is as common space for accessory use by occupants in residential units with occasional public visitation. That's what the intent is at this time.
Right now.
I think it'd be better
Yeah.
to say that rather than say,
It's
this
not
doesn't
intended
apply.
for a use of,
And if those changes, if significant changes are made, invite 500 people to an event, it's not gonna work.
well, that's what,
That's what it says, then they'll have to revise the site plan if
Yeah.
they're gonna have more
Yeah.
intense use there.
So just leave it as it is?
I would just leave it.
Yeah, that's what it says, I mean, it says, if
Yeah.
it's more intense, they're gonna have to revise the site
Yeah.
plan,
Okay,
like Paul is saying.
okay. Have we exhausted our comments before we read this as a motion?
Good.
We're doing this a little differently than we've
Yeah.
done because of the complexity of
Yeah.
it. And I don't know whether anybody else has been taking note of the changes. I will volunteer to read it if you'd like me
Okay,
to.
I was gonna suggest that either you or Paul read it.
Yeah, Paul doesn't have all the changes. I've
Okay.
been
Okay.
taking notes on that.
I'd like to make a comment before you read
Okay,
it.
please.
On the second paragraph under findings, it says the Falmouth Engineering Division does not concur. I think by putting the condition in, we can probably eliminate that statement.
Say again, please.
You raise the concerns.
Mhm.
So we took
No,
that
I think
sentence.
we should keep that in there
That's fine,
because that's part of the finding.
okay.
And then that leads to why we have that other condition.
Yeah,
Fine, okay.
I'd leave it.
Okay, so is everybody okay with this as it is?
Yes.
Okay. I move that the planning board vote to approve the application of Woods Hole Partners LLC under Article 39, Site Plan Review of the zoning bylaw for a plan entitled Proposed Site Development Plans at 533-539 Woods Hole Road, Falmouth, Massachusetts, prepared by Cape and Islands Engineering, dated October 5, 2018, revised January 31, 2019, March 29, 2019, April 26, 2019, scale as noted, 21 sheets, along with floor plans and architectural elevations entitled 535 Woods Hole Road, Unit A, prepared by Longfellow Design, 7 sheets, scale as noted, with latest revision of February 14, 2017, 535 Woods Hole Road, Unit B, prepared by Longfellow Design, 2 sheets, scale as noted, with latest revision of December 4, 2018, 535 Woods Hole Road, Unit C and D, prepared by Longfellow Design, 2 sheets, scale as noted, with latest revision of December 4, 2018, 535 Woods Hole Road, Unit F and G, prepared by Longfellow Design, 2 sheets, scale as noted, with latest revision of December 4, 2018, 535 Woods Hole Road, Unit E, prepared by Longfellow Design, 6 sheets, scale as noted, with latest revision of December 4, 2018, 535 Woods Hole Road Community Center at BF Geodesic Dome, prepared by Longfellow Design, 4 sheets, scale as noted, with latest revision of February 14, 2017, with the following findings and conditions. Findings. The applicant, Woods Hole Partners LLC, is seeking to redevelop a 5.4 acre parcel located at 533 Woods Hole Road, map number 5105, and then you've got 5 zeros, 2B, and partially located in the Woods Hole Historic District. The parcel is zoned Business Redevelopment, BR, and the applicant is proposing to construct a 43-unit residential complex consisting of 39 market-rate dwelling units in 5 buildings, 3 duplex buildings, 1 20-unit building, and 1 13-unit building, along with 2 detached duplex buildings containing 4 affordable rental units, along with the associated services, parking, drainage, and landscaping. The geodesic dome, in parentheses, the dome, designed by Buckminster Fuller, is currently situated on site along with the Nautilus Hotel. The applicant is proposing to rehabilitate the dome and demolish the Nautilus Hotel. The Engineering Division's referral dated April 10, 2019, outlines open comments and new comments from the past 3 referrals reviewing the applicant's site plan. The applicant's engineer submitted a letter dated April 26, 2019, along with revised grading and drainage plan, utilities layout plan, construction details, revised stormwater design calculations, and HydroCAD recap addressing the April 10th referral. Engineering reviewed the applicant's submission in a referral dated April 30, 2019. The project meets the requirement to handle the 25-year storm. However, a number of Falmouth Engineering Division concerns remain based on the use of the HydroCAD software, with the designer citing differences of opinion and methodology. The Falmouth Engineering Division does not concur. In regard to site distance for the east and west driveways, Ament Clower LLP submitted a letter dated April 29, 2019, along with a memorandum from Kim Eric Hazarvardian, Principal of Transportation Engineering, Planning and Policy, that states both driveways show adequate site distance and meet MassDOT stopping distance, in parentheses SSD, as well as the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, in parentheses AASHTO. Woods Hole Road is under the jurisdiction of MassDOT. The property is not located in a coastal pond overlay or water resource protection district. The applicant is proposing a fast, and those are in caps, treatment system designed for nitrogen-sensitive areas. In the Board of Health referral dated January 17, 2019, the proposed system is designed for under 10,000 gallons per day and will require Board of Health approval. Engineering has highlighted potential grading implications that could impact stormwater management, and if any revisions are required by the Board of Health, impacts to stormwater management shall be appropriately addressed and reviewed by engineering. The Water Department referral dated December 28, 2018, states the applicant will need to submit plans for the water main extension for full review by the Water Department. A private main servicing the duplex units will need to be replaced by an 8-inch main with hydrant. A utility easement will be required so the Water Department can access all curb stops, and the applicant's engineer should, as necessary, have their fire suppression designer coordinate with the Water Department for fire flow testing. The Fire Department provided no comment on the above referenced plans. The board finds that the applicant has met the requirements of filing with the Cape Cod Commission as a development of regional impact, evidenced by its minor modification type number 2 approval dated August 9, 2018. The board finds the proposed landscaping plan is compliant with Article 24 and shall require that the applicant maintain the plantings as conditioned below. The planning board's review does not include building code review, and the board defers to the building commissioner as to issues related to building code. The planning board would like to thank the applicant for revising plans and elevations based upon board review and comment. Conditions. 1, the plan shall be constructed as approved. Any changes shall be reviewed by the planning board to determine if a modification of this decision is necessary. Pursuant to 240-183B of the zoning bylaw, no permit for occupancy of the new construction shall be issued until the planning board is satisfied that the conditions of this approval have been met. However, as the construction will be phased, the applicant may seek partial certificates of occupancy for substantial completion of buildings in accordance with Section 240-193C by providing an as-built plan for review by the board. 2, the project will require the applicant to file a new application for a certificate of appropriateness by the Historical Commission to review 4 of the 7 proposed buildings as well as the rehabilitation of the dome, all found within the Woods Hole Historic District boundary. The design review function of the planning board's site plan review decision shall not supersede the Historical Commission's issuance of the certificate of appropriateness. 3, with the understanding that portions of the site lie within the Woods Hole Historic District and the jurisdiction of the Falmouth Historical Commission, the board anticipates that the site plan may need additional review in the event that footprints of any buildings are shifted. 4, given the unknown nature, should that be on that other one? In that case, it should come back to the planning board if we need additional review? No?
On 4?
3. If any of the buildings are shifted.
Site plan, and, yeah, that language that we typically use,
It already
In that
references
case,
the board
the-
in that clause, it's already says
Yeah, but it
that.
doesn't say it will come back for review.
all right, we'll add that.
So may need additional review by the planning board, just put that in? Yes?
I'm going to look for the
Okay.
language we used before. Require a revised plan for the planning board's review.
Okay, so you're putting those words in, Tom, then? Okay,
In the
thank
event
you.
any of the buildings are shifted, will require a revised plan for the planning board's review.
Okay. So continuing with the conditions. 4, given the unknown nature of the eventual use of the geodesic dome and the limited number of parking spaces currently shown for the structure, the applicants will need to apply for revision to the site plan prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the dome structure. This condition shall not apply if the dome is used only as common space for accessory use by occupants of the residential units with occasional public visitation. 5, a design for the ADA compliant sidewalk along the frontage of the dome will be provided to the town of Falmouth for comment by the Engineering Division and Planning Office prior to submitting plans to Mass DOT. 6, a design for the requested jitney stop at the western driveway will be provided to the town of Falmouth for comment by the Engineering Division and Planning Office prior to submitting plans to Mass DOT. The Planning Board will provide a written letter in support of the requested stop. 7, the applicant shall meet Mass DOT site distance requirements and will maintain vegetation within land under Mass DOT jurisdiction as necessary to maintain sufficient sight lines and distance. A stamped plan and a letter from a qualified professional engineer or surveyor will be required confirming that adequate site distance is achievable for the east and west driveways. In the event such required site distance is not achievable, the applicant will return to the board to discuss appropriate mitigation to improve safe ingress and egress to the site. 8, any changes in grading required by the Board of Health to provide adequate cover of the septic system components that impact drainage patterns will require a revised plan for the Planning Board's review. 9, the conservation staff concerns about possible impacts to northwest corner of the site that may require a filing with the Conservation Commission to address any issues. Any changes in grading or drainage to the site required by the commission will need to be incorporated on a revised plan for the Planning Board's review. 10, the landscaping shall be installed in accordance with the above referenced plans and shall be maintained in a healthy state. 11, the Cape Cod Commission Minor Modification Type Number 2 decision dated August 9, 2018, is hereby incorporated by reference to the extent applicable and not inconsistent. 12, the applicant shall provide bike racks in at least one location. 13, the applicant shall resolve the outstanding concerns raised by the Falmouth Engineering Division on the results of the stormwater model before issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Now,
Second.
okay, are there any further discussions or comments?
Yeah, I have one comment. On page 2, the first full paragraph, the ending says reviewed by engineering. I think it should say reviewed by engineering division to make sure that's referred to throughout.
So it should be reviewed by the Falmouth Engineering Division?
Got it. You know, if I may, we had talked about eliminating that middle sentence in condition 7, that a stamped plan and letter from a qualified engineer be required confirming adequate site distance. We have that in hand. I think Mr. Drewley recommended removing that.
I don't think it needs to be in there. We already have
Okay.
it, so.
So I agree, we can remove that.
Remove 7.
No, not 7,
Just
but
that
a
middle
stamped
Just that middle sentence.
plan and letter. It ends with west driveways.
The whole sentence.
That one whole sentence is being removed. And I agree to that. Bob, you agree to that removal, yes? Seconding it. Okay. Any other comments?
No.
Or questions on this? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, I just need to get that language that,
Oh, you're gonna get
That-
this whole thing, yeah. Okay,
I've heard that, you're gonna get it. I've
Okay.
heard that.
you're gonna get it.
And thank you to the
That's
staff.
unanimous.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Have fun?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have anything, we're gonna be quick, you want announcements?
Reports,
What?
table committee reports.
You don't, you want, because you're,
Table it for now.
that's okay,
Yeah.
fine,
Next meeting is May 14th.
okay. All right, request to table committee reports, Paul has to leave and can't stay, needs to move, you have
Okay.
a motion,
I'll move that.
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any announcements? I was here for the committee reports, that's the whole reason why I came. No, I'm kidding. Future agenda items?
TDRs. I still want to work on TDRs, transfer of development rights.
We must.
Because it's coming more and more an issue when it comes to affordable housing. I think we really need to jump on it.
I have a question. When do we expect to hear from the Cape Cod Commission about David Straits and putting that out to bid?
We have a May 9th conference call with them on the framework for the form-based code.
So we'll hear about that after the May 9th.
Right.
That's the answer there.
Site
Charlotte,
plan design for agenda items.
say it again?
Site plan design, before we scheduled this
A
special meeting.
guidelines,
it was
site
all-
guidelines you're talking about. So we would like to develop some guidelines for
Would like to continue
design
on
review
that.
is what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Not site plan. You meant to
That
say
site design review guidelines.
design review guidelines, okay.
We hope to have very good news for the board at our May 28th meeting about people who will be coming into the office to help us.
Oh, good.
Employee people. I don't want to get too specific, but that'll free Corey up to use his design skills at pulling together some stuff for us to consider. This would not be a zoning change. I think one of the issues that we have is we have designed things in our zoning, which makes it very difficult to waive things. Our parking layouts are in the zoning, that stuff should come out of there. Similar with design standards, it would be much like subdivision regulations. It's a regulation
we'll have a-
promulgated by the board at a hearing, but not zoning that has to go to town.
We'll have a whole meeting on this issue.
We may have several.
Several, okay. Next meeting, May 14th. Is that good with everybody?
Regular time or 3 o'clock?
Back to 6:30. Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much. That finishes our agenda.
I move to adjourn.
Adjourn.